Right, hello and welcome to Data Conversations Over Coffee with myself, Craig Stewart. As you can see, finally sponsored by Seam Coffee, possibly the best coffee in the world. I see Matthew's taking a sip there as well. I've got my Campbell Road. Joining me this morning is a group of people that I've been working with for quite a long time now, and I really respect their thoughts. I sort of trust what they say, and most of all, I just love having conversations with them because it's always fun. There's always a bit of banter as well. So I hope that you'll enjoy what they've got to say. So this is the first in a series that we're doing on power panels. This is the first South African one for this quarter. I've got a Middle East one coming up in mid-March. So let me welcome Nolly, Jackie, Madge, Siobhan, and Matthew. How are you all doing?
Fine, Craig.
Fine. Thank you.
I hope you've all got your coffee ready, and a good nod to David Wallstra and the team at Third Space and Seam for delivering some pretty good coffee over to our guests. I know Matthew's a massive fan as well. So really what I want to do today is really just sort of, I guess, distill and sort of get some thoughts around the year that was 2020 from a data analytics perspective. We were just talking now before we started the show about a documentary, I guess, a mockumentary, if you will, on Netflix called Death to 2020. So if nobody's seen that, go out and watch it. It's a really light-hearted way of looking at what was an insane year. But we've all had a lot of conversations over the course of 2020 around data analytics, how it was a catalyst. So maybe I'll start with you, Nolly. What were some of the key things that you sort of learned through 2020 and how data analytics apply to that, change your business, change your way of thinking?
Okay, thank you, Craig. So I think lockdown, and I think most people may say lockdown kind of shifted the focus and how we actually did things. It was really not business as usual. So with regards to the bank that I worked for, everybody then started working from home. And as much as it was part of their 2022 strategy, apologies for that. As much as it was part of their 2022 strategy, it kind of brought the strategy a bit forward. And because I work for Connects to Customer, at that point in time, we looked after the biggest contact center within FNB. So you can imagine where you have over 2,000 agents now that need to actually leave the office to work from home. We had to make sure that they actually were equipped with virtual offices, to actually work from home, and actually tracking their productivity became extremely important through data and analytics, because you want to make sure that people are working, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're actually selling the products that they are supposed to be selling to the right customers, etc., which would have been easy when they were doing it in the office. So we had to find ourselves being very creative when it actually came to our BI analytics, especially from productivity, from a sales and service perspective, where we went and created a geolocation dashboard firstly, so we could actually locate where all those agents were actually sitting and actually based. And then on top of that, we then included the load shedding schedule onto the geolocation, so that you are able to actually see that, okay, these agents are sitting in this area, there will be load shedding. And if that's going to happen, then we actually organize transport for them to actually leave home to go to work, so they could work at the office for that period of the load shedding. So also logistically, it also became a very interesting time for us. And then we also had to include things like connectivity data, ISP data, because a lot of the agents would be working from home with like dongles. So you want to know that they are actually connected, there aren't any system issues. And all of this would then be backed up with data and analytics, of which we then had to do continuous reporting to the various stakeholders, because as heads of business, you want to know how productive your people are. So it was a very interesting year. And we actually found that a lot of people now actually started using our dashboards, which was an issue previously, the usage of dashboards. So you are then able to actually go onto the mobile Power BI platform and actually look at that dashboard to actually track the productivity of your agents and your staff, which kind of helped us a lot. And then this has also led us now to embark on a data literacy journey, because from the usage of those dashboards, we actually started getting a lot more questions where people, that's when we actually realized a lot of our stakeholders actually do not understand data. So yeah, it was a tough year, but very interesting, to say the least. Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a mic drop moment, sending a whole call center out of the office to work from home, and then adding all those different layers, understanding when load shedding is going to take place, where they're sitting, ISP data, top job. How did you find the productivity? Because so many people that I talk to, I'm working from home now, I'm so much more productive. Obviously, contact center people potentially a little bit different. Did you find that there was a drop in productivity, or did it actually increase over time?
Funny enough, it actually increased. I think the fact that people were working from home, they don't need to spend an hour and a half driving to the office. So even from a scheduling perspective, because I also look after resource planning and monitoring, so we actually schedule those agents from a working perspective. A lot of the guys actually asked to actually be scheduled a bit earlier. So instead of you starting at like 8 p.m., they're available to start at 7 p.m., not 8 p.m., 8 a.m. They're available to actually start at 7 a.m. And then also from the breaks perspective, because they used to get 2 coffee breaks and lunch. So some people, as much as because they're working from home, would actually opt to even move some of those breaks because of their availability. There are guys, I'm not going to lie, that weren't able to work from home. Those guys we moved permanently into the office, but a majority, which is over 75%, were actually working from home. So they were more productive than they were at the office. I'm not going to lie, yeah.
Oh, great results. Siobhan, I saw you nodding your head in agreement with a lot of that. So I know you've kind of shifted out of the corporate space, but did you sort of find you needed to use the same sort of things to manage the work from home environment and the productivity and people's engagement?
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. I mean, I left corporate really towards the end of September, but prior to that, absolutely. I think for us, I don't think I can sort of firmly say productivity increased necessarily. I think it was very much team dependent, role dependent, and it really had its ups and downs. I think at the start of the lockdown, there was this sort of massive uplift in productivity for the reasons Nolly mentions. Everybody sort of had moved off site, people weren't stuck in traffic, days were starting earlier and all of that. But I think sort of as COVID fatigue started to set in, as the lockdown sort of just continued to drag out, I think people really started to suffer quite a bit. And I think what I saw quite a bit was just, and I have the most respect for sort of working mums, working dads, because just to be able to cope with being mum, teacher, running a household all at the same time, while in a way, I think some of the expectation over time shifted. It sort of became expected that you were available from early in the morning to sort of late in the evening because, well, you're in a lockdown, you can't do anything else. So yeah, let's have a call on a Saturday, or let's have a call at 8 o'clock at night. So I think that was an interesting observation for me. Sort of boundaries really started to fall away. And I think we had to work quite purposefully, sort of, by the middle of the lockdown, to actually try and reinstitute them. And as an organization, purposefully force people to take leave. The execs were sending out emails saying, take a day on us. Nobody's in the office on Monday. For a whole bank to not be in the office on Monday, as an example, is quite a big thing. But that was really just to try to help people sort of from a mental health perspective and keep them going.
Siobhan, if I can maybe just comment a little bit on the parenting issue. I must say that it's actually affecting all of us. I mean, I'm actually hoping that my little one doesn't pass right here as I'm actually chatting to you now, because I'm a temporary single parent during the day when her mom is at work. Just wanted to make a silly comment on that one.
No, I don't think it's a silly comment, Jackie. I think we're a lot of us are dealing with that at the moment. Either that or a rogue cat or a dog that you're trying to manage at the same time. So.
And it really is a universal issue. I think that's what's actually, in a way, been somewhat positive about this, is you sort of feel a little bit more connected, even to people sitting miles away. I had a call the other day with somebody sitting in Canada, and sort of their cat came past the screen, and the sort of CEO of a big corporation over there, and you just had to have a little chuckle. And the other day I was watching CNN, and the CEO of Trivago was chatting, and his little boy came in, and you sort of think to yourself, in that environment, everybody will be set up that those sorts of interruptions don't happen. But then he went, picked the little boy up, put him on his lap, and carried on. And I think people have now accepted, that's the norm. So
Yeah.
in a way, I think it's sort of humanized us to an extent, but obviously it's come with massive challenges.
Yeah. I saw a video with Graham Smith was doing sort of some commentary on state of South African cricket, which is a whole nother story. But his little boy came in with a cricket bat and started bashing the computer. So what are you going to do? At least we know he's got some cricket skills. So we've got some depth in the country, at least. Matthew, let's come to you. Let's talk a little bit about your 2020. I know you're sort of quite involved in the stats around COVID and the interest in that. Anything interesting that cropped up for you? Any sort of insights you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say, and I spoke about in a lot in 2020, is exactly what you were talking about now. I was obviously quite involved in the stats and monitoring things from an economic perspective. And one of my top books of 2020 was a book called How Charts Lie by Alberto Cairo. And you could really see that last year, where people were taking numbers which were accurate. And a lot of politicians were doing this, and I won't name any names, and showing charts that were actually accurate, but the way they depicted the numbers were obviously painting a very different picture. And people say, no, those numbers aren't accurate. And it's actually very difficult to argue that, because sometimes the numbers were accurate, but it's obviously the way in which they present that. And of course, people can use numbers, and I can use the same numbers as anybody else on the call and present a very different picture, even potentially a contradictory picture. So I think How Charts Lie is a really great book that I'd recommend to anybody, even people, not necessarily people that are creating charts, but even people consuming charts, whether that's in the news, watching the news, reading the newspaper, or anything like that, because it just shows how people can really paint different pictures using numbers by just manipulating, the visuals. And that, to me, what became so evident last year. And there's so much, as we know, misinformation around, whether it was intentional, and a lot of it was even unintentional, but it was just the way people understand statistics and really understand data. So I really think that became incredibly important to me. And one of the things that I really try to tell my team is, there's actually a great book I read by Andy Kirk called Visualizing Data Visualization. And he talks about the 3 principles. And the one principle is integrity. You really want to be, somebody's looking at your data, whether it's data analytics, raw data, or visual outputs. You really want to be, that person can't be able to question the data, they won't be able to trust it. It needs to be correct. It needs to be obviously accessible to the audience as well. I think the people were creating charts that weren't necessarily accessible. And what I mean by that is they were trying to show a picture and people misinterpreted it because they maybe didn't come from a statistics background or come from a data background. And of course, being able to misinterpret charts is so easy. And then obviously it needs to be elegant as well and really show a story. And we saw that last year, really. Data analytics came to the fore in terms of data storytelling. So that was one of the big themes for me. Is really that whole thing about being honest and with data, being respectful with it, and showing charts in the right way. And then I'll just touch on the work from home. I mean, 2020 was obviously a terrible year for a lot of people. There were a couple of positives, at least, that I can take out from me. And one of the positives was that I did get to spend so much more time with my son. And exactly like people said, I mean, I had meetings with my son literally sitting on my lap because he wouldn't leave my office, playing with my mouse. In fact, the ones he actually exited a meeting. He did something, and I just exited the meeting while I was presenting to my boss. But I mean, it's just part of the course of working from home.
Yeah, some great stories like that. Madge, how about your sort of lessons or highlights, lowlights from last year? I know we've talked a lot about sort of how the whole thing was a catalyst to really putting data analytics on the map and the real-time insights and the information that people wanted.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, listening to everyone, and there was a quote that reminded me of what Matthew was speaking about, where it was kind of just like a saying. It was saying, in God we trust and everyone else bring data. So I think it's a testament to kind of how people can wrangle things. But from us, once we started working from home, it just kind of what it involved, or how our teams got involved, was just almost going back to basics. We just saw a huge demand, or a huge surge in demand on helping kind of the business and businesses trying to automate a lot of the new, let's call it, views that they need to get. So, you're monitoring people moving between different buildings, between offices. Are people screening themselves properly? There was a whole bunch of like manual work that we had to automate and really help the business kind of optimize that. Because again, you know, to sit there doing manual interventions in the most powerful tool in the world, Excel, is not the optimal time or the most optimal use of people's time. But I think, you know, operationally, we really had to get our hands kind of on deck to really help people drive kind of new insights to the stuff that was happening in the background that we haven't used or seen before. So we really like just made sure that we were there helping people, automating as much as we can. But the biggest aspect was that, you know, we really tried to drive kind of this new wave of being able to process information in a much more rapid time, even though it sounds like, yeah, but we should be doing this already, you know, we're a bank and all of that. But sometimes you forget that some of the most basic things are the hardest to do, especially from a data collection and being able to get it to a point like what Matthew was saying, in an accurate version that we can make proper decisions from, because these are people's lives at the end of the day. And then, you know, like, I don't want to also be like, oh, it was such a terrible year. You know, we actually did have some really good times, and, you know, just change the whole perception around how we manage and motivate teams digitally, which becomes a little bit tricky, you know, once you remove you kind of like the human element out of it. I was just explaining to someone what's the actual problem at the moment, and I think it's the first year in most cases that people would go to the office and for the first few days, you know, spend some time with your colleagues, share stories around vacation, you know, if people got tans, you know, share, you know, kind of show off, this is where I spent my holiday. You know, for me and you, Craig, it's not really a thing that we really focus on.
I never heard about a tan before.
Yeah, me too. So, and then I think the most important thing is that we had that time to reflect, you know, going into this year, really making sure that we adjust a lot of the strategic work that we were doing, you know, kind of to complement 2021 and really start off on a really good base, because I think we've done a lot of the hard work, but I think let's, you know, hopefully the vaccine is coming through, everything will work out. It's more to look forward to this year, and using 2020 as a backbone of learning rather than lack of despair. That's how the attitude that we're taking at the moment now, just to kind of make things a little bit easier, because some of us didn't have the best start to 2021, and let's hope that it carries on going in the positive direction.
Yeah, all right, some positive thoughts there. Jackie, let's quickly come to you and just get your thoughts, because I want to move on to really getting you all to just talk about what trends you see for 2021. So Jackie, maybe just a minute or two on, I guess, your 2020 experience and how data analytics really helped within the organization at Hollard.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. I mean, yes, to be honest, 2020 was definitely a year unusual. I mean, nobody expected the year to pan out the way it did. But I think for us specifically, my team specifically, and myself personally, I think working from home became the best thing ever. You know, because I mean, I personally don't really like the commute in the morning. I mean, I'm not one of those morning people, and I hate commuting in the morning. The traffic from Alberton to Joburg is horrendous. So for me, it really turned out to be quite a productive thing, because I mean, working from home, you find that you're actually a lot more productive and you work a lot longer, of course, with the interruption of the kids and the like, but you ultimately do work and you become productive. But then back to the business, in the insurance space, there was obviously a jump in terms of demand for analytics and BI information, as everyone started panicking and expecting us to lose a lot of business, you know, as business people go out of business, because we've got a lot of policies on there with credit life. You know, we expected a lot of people to die, which luckily didn't happen really in the first wave. But then, of course, there was a lot of demand from a strategic and operational point where people started demanding a lot of analytics. But then for me, what really stood out was the regulatory requirements. All of a sudden, the regulators started really putting us under a microscope. You know, previously we used to have like fixed reports that would go out to the regulator. Now, all of a sudden, there's an avalanche of ad hoc requests from the regulators as they're trying to see if the insurers will be able to meet this and that need. You know, so, and that became quite a big thing for us, and we started spending a whole lot of time catering for regulatory requirements. You know, And I mean, for me, some of the things that they were asking for were some of the things that we should have taken care of anyway, you know. So I think it ended up being a good thing because it made us look at our data really well and make sure that our data is accurate, because those guys, especially the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, they know what they're doing. That I must say. And you have to make sure that what you're presenting to them is accurate. So it helped us in a way to actually get on our toes as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's where we've been. So over and above anything, the regulatory environment just exploded in the insurance space.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We've got a question in from our audience / Matthew around insurance claims. What did you see around that in terms of increase, decrease through the course of the year?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it was a bit of a mixed match. So in the vehicle insurance space, I mean, as you expect, the claims actually went down as less people were driving. But then other claims went up. Like, for example, claims that had to do with people that were losing their jobs all of a sudden shot up. And that became quite a big headache for us. But I think where the biggest threat and worry for everyone in insurance was on the business interruption cover, where a lot of companies were saying, look, we've gone out of business and we want to claim all this big money because of COVID, but the insurance policies did not explicitly have a COVID or something related to COVID as a cover. So it became a big wrangle that's actually still in the courts as far as I remember. And it's a big worry for everyone in insurance, because that can potentially come up to quite a few billions, if I can put it modestly.
Yeah. All right, good. Thanks. I'm sure Matthew will be satisfied with that answer, but can always dig into a bit more detail. We've got a few things coming in terms of Matthew suggests that Mad should win the award for the most rugged man in data analytics. And Mad retorts with Matthew is the slickest chap on the digital block. So I think if we've got a new sort of DataCon awards, I think we've already found 2 new categories in that. One thing I will say, sort of, I guess my thoughts from last year and some of the lot of positives that we could take out of it was actually more interaction. I found that in the physical sort of environment, you know, in our business, we had got to a point where we'd kind of have these conversations, you know, maybe twice a year, 3 times a year at a conference or a round table, but it really ramped up the amount of communication that we could put out and the sort of the way that we could connect people, you know, through environments like this, and also people from all over the world together. So there were a lot of positives on that human side. So I'm going to go into the next section now, really around the trends for 2021. And I don't want to sort of do a round robin, but I don't know if anybody wants to kick off, and maybe we can just sort of, you know, talk openly about what are some of the trends that you see in data analytics, digital business for 2021.
Can I maybe ask a question to the panel?
Craig? Yeah, go for it.
So my question is I'm very interested to hear everyone's thoughts on AutoML. AutoML has kind of been hailed as the sort of next generation of data science. I personally think it's amazing when used correctly. I think it's also got a lot of risk to it. I think it allows really people that don't understand statistics and data science to just create black box models. And not black box because the tools don't show you what the models do. It's more black box because I don't think necessarily the users always understand what the tools are doing. And I think that there's a lot of risk there. I think that is going to be one of the big trends going forward. And then, I mean, it's even been touted as a trend to the extent that it might put sort of data scientists out of business, which I don't think would be the case, because I think even if you've got AutoML creating the algorithms, you still actually need somebody to be able to explain them and see if it's still the right one. Just because the tool has chosen the right algorithm doesn't mean it actually is the right one, which I've seen, you know, personally. Obviously, a lot of potential there. What does everybody think?
Matthew, I mean, to be honest, where we are right now in Holland across the different BUs is that we are at a very early stage in our maturity level for data science. So we definitely nowhere near going towards auto machine learning. But I mean, obviously, it's something that would be worth checking out. Even though, I mean, I've got a few questions in my head as you're mentioning it now. You know, things like, does it depend on the quality of data? Would it be able to work around issues around the quality of data? Because I mean, at the end of the day, what you produce it actually deeply depends on the quality of what data you're putting into the system. And secondly, I also definitely agree with your point around the need for human intervention. That will never go away, in my opinion, because like you correctly say, you still need somebody to go and interpret and be able to explain to the business what the data and the insights are saying. And that for me is where the biggest value of anything, whether BI, data science, really is. It's about that ability to be able to explain it to the business. And how are we going to work around that? So for me, it's actually more like a question over anything, because we are nowhere near doing auto machine learning in Holland, at least in our company. Thanks.
Yeah, I think if I can come in, I was just going to say I agree both with the points that Matthew and Jackie have raised, just around the importance still of, I guess, the human interpretation and lens, over analytics, algorithms, data, and so forth. And I think in terms of trends, for me, that sort of business literacy side of things and that business acumen and the need for analytics teams, to come with that is going to be even more prevalent in 2021, because I think some of the trends we saw last year, around sort of the importance of data and analytics and supporting a business to make key decisions is going to continue. That we're not through this yet. And I think so that will be there, but it's going to be even more incumbent upon those analysts to really be able to partner with the business to help them make sort of effective, timeless decisions. And I think perhaps, at least for our organization last year, there's probably quite a big focus from a defensive perspective, in a sense, keep the lights on, reporting to the regulator, all of that kind of thing. And I think slowly, we do need to start also focusing on recovery. And what does that mean for the business? And, also perhaps building on some of the positive that has been created out of this, what it has done for a shift in digitalization and operating models for businesses, where, for example, in our business, we were traditionally very high touch. Clients expected a very high touch service from a private bank, but now they're actually a lot more comfortable engaging virtually. So what opportunities does that create for the business in terms of scaling a business, shifting an operating model, understanding your client needs and the shift in their behavior? Because I think also sitting as a business heading up an investment business last year for our organization, you saw a very quick shift in client behavior as a result of COVID and client priorities. And being able to actually respond to that very, very quickly is going to need the support of these analytics teams, but they're really going to have to be able to communicate with the business critically. So I think some of those trends will shift, not only from sort of the reporting to the regulator, keeping the lights on. I think a big focus on figuring out how to support clients, as we continue through this, because I think, it's if you look at the numbers economically, it's still really tough out there. But then also, as I say, sort of maybe a little bit of a shift at some point to thinking about a recovery, finding new revenue streams and capitalizing on some of the positive that has come out.
Shubhen, I mean, you're making very good points there, and there are a few things that are standing out for me, and I think this could also work in the insurance space, because I think the insurance industry lags the banking industry and maybe even the telecoms industry when it comes to getting a bigger share of the customer's wallet. That's a big thing for us, and it's going to be a big thing for us. Last year, we had a big focus on customer experience. Everybody was talking customer experience. Let's make sure the customer is getting the most positive experience. But now going forward, it's going to be what else can we actually sell to this guy, to be able to get a bigger share of the customer's wallet. I mean, the banks have been doing this for years, where they're selling as many products as they can to the same guy. In the telecom space, you see a big shift where companies are actually moving away from being just telecom companies to being digital companies, because it's really more about what else can we sell and how can we take the best advantage of our data. In the insurance industry, we've lagged everyone. And I think there's going to be a big focus in terms of that. And you're going to see a lot of insurance companies beginning to shift their operating model completely, in terms of who they are and what they are, as we begin to use the very rich data that we have. And I think we're sitting on a gold mine, because we've got a lot of data, a lot of legacy systems with data going back many, many years. And now it's time to say in insurance, what else can be done with this data? And how do we change our operating model?
All right, we've got Nolly.
No, I was going to agree with Jackie 100%. I think especially with the banks and how a lot of them actually performed financially last year. So we're all trying to recover, and most of that recovery is actually aimed at the wallet, us actually increasing our customer wallet with regards to the number of customers that we actually have in our various segments. And it doesn't actually help now that you've got your Discovery Banks and Times and all these other fintechs trying to enter the market and compete with us. But we need to be competitive in order to actually stay abreast and afloat. But data will play an extremely important role there. So like you've got things like money management, which is a big focus for our bank, where especially now with the lockdown, you need to ensure that your customers are financially literate in order to actually then stay the course and will remain in the segments that they're in. So yeah, no, I totally agree with Jackie and Siobhan 100%.
All right. We've got a bit of a sort of a debate going on. Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about the data protection side. Do you have something else that you wanted to mention?
Sure. I think just quickly to kind of wrap up AutoML, like from my experience with it, and, you know, like I studied kind of a portion of it last year as well. Business is not ready for it. It's more of a tech thing, you know, getting systems to talk to each other or specific models to talk to each other for outputs to run on models and, you know, optimize specific things. It's like when I see that the kind of the value that it will add, I don't feel it will land in the banking space, especially in the space that we work in just yet. And you know what? Trying to explain AutoML to business now, good luck. That's all I'm saying. So I think we have to kind of be cognizant of the fact there's so many other things that we need to worry about. Trying to automate it to that level, yes, we will get there, but it's just not the right time now. Just quickly, I think a big trend for 2021, and I'm seeing it more and more pop up through, you know, other people trying to like drive specific conference points of view, blogs, podcasts. There's a lot centered around data management. I think this era or this trend is starting to bubble up again. And I think from my perspective, the hard realization is that that's going back to basics. That's basically literally going back to the bare bone of what you should be doing. If you install or instill the right level of data management competencies across the business, you just increase quality. That's, I mean, essentially at the end of the day, what its objective is, right? Holding people accountable for what the data quality that they create, making sure that they know what they need to fix, their responsibility in that space. And for the back end of the last 4 months of last year, the team and I, we worked on kind of restructuring a whole new way of looking at data management and how to execute it, especially in the corporate banking space. You know, we've tried different models on how to get it right, but I think, you know, going back to kind of what's something that we've developed around much more ownership, federated, and accountability within business. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it logically, and this is maybe for people that are not as data inclined, if someone is sitting on a computer and capturing customer information to log them onto the system, that's where the data quality lies, right? That's where if you empower people with the right level of let's call it tech infrastructure, or let's call it interface, to correctly capture all those details, it's from that point where it starts to drive. And I keep reminding people, a lot of people forget that, and this is like kind of what I used at Exco level to explain, is that 1 liter of bad oil can, you know, affect 1 million liters of good, clean drinking water. And that's in essence what we need to kind of really start understanding, that at the source, if we don't fix it, it will never get fixed. And there's this constant chasing and manual intervention in order to get it up. And, you know, the aggregates or the averages of averages just start kind of really impacting the quality of outputs. And if you ever consider even going down the AutoML, anyone that has ever done any type of statistical course will know that any influence in variable, any tiny small influence in variable could change the output drastically from a yes to even a no. And imagine that impact on people that have to go specific, to go see customers or make a decision on a customer. It's detrimental. So I just see this trend coming back now to say, okay, what do we actually need to do to improve data quality? And what we've done is, through this process of redesigning this whole operating model, we've lifted to a point where now we will start as a bank measuring data quality, which we're driving to at a monthly Exco level. for each business unit to come up with their own data quality score, to put it at an exco level, that we can start focusing on data quality from the top down, and actually adding that relative pressure to get everyone involved in order to improve it. And it's I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying it's going to work and make drastic changes. We're still driving it now. But I think for me, that element of visibility and understanding that you have a responsibility to data quality as each person throughout the bank is something, for me, as a trend, that's going to be becoming a lot more prevalent in 2021.
Yeah, it's kind of takes me a little bit back to... Pardon, Matthew?
I was just saying, but before Magic added the measuring at an exco level, I thought he was just saying we're going to start measuring data quality. I was going to say that's probably not a bad idea to start measuring data quality.
Yeah, I know. I think it's, what people don't realize, kind of to a lot of companies' defense, they see that data quality is there, but at what point? Do you measure it when it comes out of the systems? Do you measure it at the point that you report on, when it needs to go to the SARB or whatever regulatory body outside? Where is data quality measured in the data value chain across all the organizations? And this is where I think, if we actually measure it at as many points as we physically can, then we really start seeing kind of what we need to kind of get right first in order to stop the manual intervention to get the numbers that we always want to see.
Mesh, very good point around data quality. If I can make a very short and quick comment around that. I mean, for us, we had quite a big initiative as well around data quality. I mean, as I said, we were getting a lot of hits and a lot of attention from the regulator, and we needed to improve our data quality over and above our operational and strategic needs. And for us, how we managed to turn the corner is when we got business heavily involved in the data quality initiative. Getting the roles of data stewards to play a big role in data quality became a big issue for us. Because I think, number one, it helped because they were able to identify those key metrics and fields that were important for them from a data quality perspective, as opposed to us in data and analytics, telling them what was important. They were now leading and saying, look, for me, this is important. And then secondly, they also got involved in terms of monitoring the quality dashboards that we put out. They would be able to look at all of those metrics on a daily basis. And where things weren't really going the way we expected it to go, they got involved from a remediation perspective to make sure that they were able to go back to the source data systems and the business processes to improve these things. And I'll give I like to use the word silly a lot. I'll give a silly example. One of our key retail partners actually didn't have an ID number as a compulsory field in their systems. Very strange. I mean, when you apply for a retail account at this company, the ID number was not required at all. And imagine the impact that it did, obviously, from a data perspective. These guys had somewhere around 30 to 40% completion rate for ID numbers. And when we got the data stewards to get involved in remediation, that number suddenly went up. And then you began to see a lot of improvement and a lot of value, from this. I mean, I can mention a ton of things that you can do with this kind of data improvement. So involve business, guys. When you involve business in data quality, things improve quite drastically. Thanks.
So, Matt, I agree with you totally. I think with us, where data quality started playing a big role towards the end of last year. So we've actually created working groups. So like the data quality one actually meets every 2 weeks, where we've actually now created data quality processes, that actually defines at what point in time in that value chain, as you mentioned, that we need to actually identify those issues with the data quality and what the remediations of those are. Same thing with exception reports. And we've also linked that together with the metadata working group, because for me, those two are actually very important. And then I think to Jackie's point, I think myself and I'm one of those teams where we made sure that we actually had data stewards within our BI and analytics team to actually assist with regards to the data capturing and analytics, particularly the technical and business metadata. And then also in the process of actually also hiring a records manager, because for me, those two things or two roles are very important, especially when it comes to data quality management. And I think I read somewhere in Gartner where they were talking about metadata being the new black, so like the new black oil. So I totally agree with you. You can't, the inputs that you give in from a quality of data perspective will actually then impact your models, your dashboards, and everything else. So we need to make sure that the quality of data is actually of the highest standard, and that will actually then serve business quite well going forward.
I think, Nali, I completely agree with you. And I just wanted to add to what everybody has said around data quality. And I think another trend around that, and certainly something we picked up last year, just actually through having to do the regulatory reporting, was it's not just about the quality of the data you're currently sitting on, but a lot more thought actually needs to be given to the data you're capturing going forward. You know, obviously not only in the context of a data governance perspective to make sure you're sort of just capturing what you need and nothing more, but we talk about things like enabling ecosystems and that sort of stuff. And from that perspective, what is it going to mean for us as data practitioners in terms of the data we're actually going to need to start thinking about storing, capturing on clients to actually be able to deliver that also. As I say, you know, we picked up just in providing stats to the regulators, some of the data that we hadn't been storing, for example, on entities, was never a massive part of the business, didn't really ever think we'd need that sort of information. I guess nobody sort of foresaw a crisis coming, and well, there you were. Actually, it would have been quite helpful to have had some of the information. But I think that plays out in a much bigger setting when you start to think about pivoting business models, to Jackie's point, shifting from just being perhaps a financial partner for your client to like a lifestyle partner. You know, so what elements of data also then are you storing from a completeness perspective, accuracy, and so forth?
Good. Well, I mean, I think another year sort of rolls on, and a big focus on data governance, data management, data quality. It does seem like, I guess it's been sort of shone a big light on the importance of it, where maybe years prior, business was a little bit complacent, but can no longer really afford to be. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of progresses through the year. And I think what we'll do is maybe add in a sort of a data quality improvement award as part of the DataCon award, so people can actually show and tell, and maybe share some metrics, and we can expose. Well, we obviously won't expose the people that haven't done it because they won't have submitted for the award, but at least we can celebrate the people that have done a good job. All right, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Any closing thoughts or anything like that? Maybe some pearls of wisdom you want to share with the data analytics community as we kick off 2021? Madge?
I'm happy to go first. I think for me, I think for me, one of the big things in 2021 is also going to be building data assets. And by that, I mean building these data assets that you can scale across the organization, so they're reusable and they're scalable. So building data, so you don't want to spend, I mean, going back to data quality, you don't want to spend a year working on data quality for something that you can only use once. And obviously there's some data that you just have to get right. It's a non-negotiable, you know, like your client data. But if it's working on other things, or data enrichment rather, you don't want to do data enrichment for just one use case. You'd rather build that into a data asset that you can actually enable multiple use cases across the organization. And that's where analytics really becomes scalable within organizations. So for me, a big focus personally in 2021 is on building data assets.
I completely agree with Matthew. That's something that I'm trying to transition the team to do, is stop working on things for a specific output. It's the bundling of things together to create data assets in all spheres. The 4 capabilities that we run underneath me, it doesn't have to only be focused on building analytical models. You can build data assets that can be reused across the organization in any kind of frame or reference. And what we're doing as well, and this is going to kind of segue into the talk that we're going to have at DataCon later on this year, is that, you know, there has to be that intrinsic value that we're going to work with business and co-create with them the whole time to say, this is our North Star that we're chasing through this data asset. We're in this together, and it's for you. At the end of the day, if we don't implement and drive it for business, what's the point? And this is kind of what we're really, really getting a lot of traction in, because this is the data asset that we want to hand over. That is the value that they need within that business unit at that point in time, that we can either reuse the base of that asset for something else or someone else. But in essence, it's that golden thread that we need to get pulling through to value every single time we do any piece of work.
Madge, I agree with you. So with my team, it's also hard for them to actually stop the way of how they normally think to actually move to this whole data assets conversation. But with us, we actually forced, and I think Matthew, you guys should be part of this. With us migrating our data to the reservoir and our enterprise data warehouse, one of the mandatory components of that is having data assets created in order for you to then be able to do that migration of the data. So this is actually now a journey we started towards the end of last year. But as you're saying, it's just trying to contextually shift how they work and how they actually think in order to actually create those data assets, because that's exactly what business actually needs. And you want to make sure that the data is actually then reusable going forward. And I think from my side, one of the focuses for our team this year is just decision intelligence, right? And just decision modeling, because I've realized that as much as we're creating all these models and dashboards and reports, a lot of them aren't really driving prescriptive analytics for our users. We need to be able to actually then inform them and prescribe to them what to do with that information that they actually are seeing. And for me, that's like a gap in the insights that we're actually providing business. So that's one of the big things that we're also trying to focus on our side.
Nice one. Thanks, Nolly. Jackie, Siobhan, any quick closing comments?
Yeah, from my side, I mean, I definitely agree with the panel. I mean, data assets is definitely quite an important thing. And with us in the insurance space, and especially my own company, where we've got a federated model and we've got 4 different BUs, you can imagine just how many analytics teams we have, that are not necessarily always working together. So there's definitely an opportunity there in terms of looking at what we can reuse and looking at creating data assets as opposed to having a siloed approach. But then lastly for us, I mean, I think going into this year, once again, customer analytics is going to be extremely important for us. We're going to pay a lot of attention to that. And of course, the cloud journey continues in insurance. I don't know what the other guys are. You're probably a lot more ahead than us. But yeah, for us, the cloud, the focus on the cloud is still going to be very important as we move away from on-prem to the cloud, which we hope will be a lot more efficient in terms of processing a lot more volumes of data, and will thus give us an opportunity, to get the most out of our analytics. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, Craig, I agree with everything that's been said already. I think maybe a trend that I'll say, I think also again will continue is just the trend around data literacy, and I think that's always topical. It's spoken about at length. Definitely was last year. But I think at the same time, my parting comment would just be again to emphasize the point I made around business literacy and the importance of business literacy and business acumen for the data and the analytics teams. I think last year was really a pivotal moment in demonstrating the value of those teams to businesses, particularly in times of crisis. But at the same time, as I said, how it can really enable a business into a recovery. But I think that will only be properly enabled if the team is further able to demonstrate its value by being able to actually properly communicate results, impacts, insights, and so forth to the business, so that those aren't just shelved at the bottom of a drawer, but are acted upon.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually something we talked about in the show last week with Gavin van Wyk was data literacy and business literacy, and we sort of then talked about this convergence of literacy. So you're not just kind of getting the one up to speed and the others falling behind, but actually bringing them together. And I think that's maybe the glue of sort of a data-centric culture across the organization, if they both understand each other. So it's definitely something I'm going to keep talking about through the course of the year, because I think it's a really important thing, and it's coming up independently as well, which shows its importance. Everybody watching, if you could maybe put your thoughts, your trends into the comment section, just so I can start to collect a lot more. I'm going to generate a trends report for the first half of this year. But thank you so much, all of you, for joining me. Always great to chat to you. And I look forward to catching up soon, and hopefully in a physical environment over a good cup of coffee at Scene. Thanks, everyone.